The Steam Shmup Fest has arrived, and of course this event is ridiculous because the vast majority of games listed on the front page of this sale aren't even shmups to begin with. This poor punished genre cannot even headline its own Steam sale. And before I read 1,000 comments justifying why Enter the Gungeon is actually a shmup, I actually have a 1-hour dissertation that identifies what I consider the definition of shmups. And so if you want to talk about what games qualify as a shmup, what games don't qualify as a shmup, what the relationship between shmups and shooters are, there's an entire video all about that. In today's video, what I'm going to be doing is recommending 30 shmups on Steam that I think you should be checking out. But instead of doing the usual 30 shmup recommendation of the games that I talk about all the time, the popular beloved shmups that are going to find their way across your radars, instead I decided to pick out what I consider 30 deep cuts within the genre. 30 games that, unless you are really into shmups, you probably aren't going to come across, that I think deserve more attention and interest. And helping me out with creating this list, I employed a little shmup council of myself, Boghog, and M.Knight. For those not familiar with Boghog, he's a very talented shmup developer. One of his games is actually on this list. He's also a friend and frequent guest of the channel, the most frequent guest, in fact, and creates all the amazing thumbnails. So he's like an alumni of the Electric Underground. And then M.Knight is a friend of the channel and a really solid reviewer of shmups, and he runs the Shmup Curator on Steam, which you all should be following. So he's on the ground creating fantastic reviews for shmups that even I am not aware of. So I think this is going to be a really awesome and solid list. And they left me some notes on the games that I'll point out as we go through. So let's begin with number 1, Gunvane. Now this isn't exactly a hidden gem, but I do think this game deserves more attention. Boghog, one of the members of this list, created this game, though this is my pick. Gunvane is a really fantastic, well-made Western bullet hell. It is one of the games breaking the Euro shmup curse, where it's not a matter of where the game comes from, it's a matter of philosophy of design. And Gunvane definitely knows what it's doing. So if you're a fan of Crimzon Clover, if you're a fan of Dodonpachi STOJ, Dodonpachi Daifukatsu, Ketsui, and then RAIZING games like Battle Garega, Gunvane is a fantastic choice, and I love the pace of this game. It does not have any downtime. It just goes and goes and never stops until you either win or you die. So I'm a huge fan of this game and thought I'd begin by shouting it out. Next up, we have Castle Shikigami 2. Again, Castle Shikigami isn't exactly a deep cut, but in the world of shmups, it is underappreciated, and I have been playing Shiki 2. And sorry to the Shiki hipsters out there, like M.Knight, I think Shiki 2 is the best in the series that I've played. And I think it is a really well-rounded, solid pickup for bullet hell fans. And also I'm quite sure that Castle Shikigami was an influence on Touhou. And so if you're a Touhou player, you should be checking out Shiki as well. One really important note about the Steam release though, is that the Steam release does not come with the English dub, but you can patch the English dub into the Steam release. This is basically a requirement because for those who do not know, Castle Shikigami 2's English dub is a masterpiece.
Mr. President, never forget the duty of an American. I pay taxes, work, and I always vote. I fight for freedom of this country. This fight is for Japan. For friendship.
It is the peak of video game voice acting. It puts games like Shenmue and Castlevania Symphony of Night to shame. It is something you have to experience, so definitely make sure to put in that English dub. And then up next we have Cybar Delta. This was a big recommendation from Boghog. He loves this game. It is pretty unique and kind of hard to explain, but basically what Cybar Delta is a bullet hell with a lot of emphasis on bullet grazing. And in fact, you use bullet grazing not only defensively to build up meters, but offensively to build up iframes and all kinds of crazy shit. And the more you graze bullets, the faster you spin. So if you're playing Star Fox and barrel rolls just aren't fast enough, Cybar Delta is taking it to the next level in a really well-made, underappreciated game. So shout outs to Cybar Delta. And then up next we have Cotton Rock and Roll, or Cotton Fantasy as it's known in Japan. A game that I regret not playing or reviewing when it came out. But according to both Boghog and M.Knight, This is the best Cotton game just of the franchise outright. And so if you're a Cotton fan, if you've never heard of this game, it is your duty to play it and check it out. And then up next, we have Helsinker, a game that I do talk about on the channel quite a bit, but you all are not
listening.
You need to be checking out Helsinker. There is no game like this, let alone no shmup like this. I can only describe Helsinker as a game created by a mad genius chained to his computer for 100 years. There is so much going on. It is almost as much character action as it is shmup with the amount of moves and maneuvers and systems. Admittedly, the game is extremely hard to understand at first and to get into. There is a lot of front load when it comes to learning its systems, but once you get into it, there's just nothing like it, and I do think more people need to be checking it out. It deserves to be one of those big cult classics, but it's not quite there yet, so I'll continue to push it, continue to talk about it. I'm going to be playing it more here very shortly. Helsinker, can't say enough about it. Then up next, we have Softstar. This thing was a big splash when it came out a year or two ago. Time is escaping me, but I remember when Softstar came out, I was on a podcast with 4 other shmup YouTubers, and everyone except myself chose Softstar as their shmup of the year. I went with Gunvane, but it is a really well-made sort of mesh of an old school compile, whatever, that era of shmup mixed in with some bullet hell sensibilities, nice hitbox size. This is a game that I reviewed, did a 1cc, had a ton of fun with, and still more people need to be aware of Softstar. Then up next is a game that I haven't played yet, but I love what I am seeing and I hear it recommended to me all the time, and Boghog was a big proponent of this as well, which is Sora. And as you can see from the gameplay footage here, this is quite unique. It is an arena battle shmup of some kind. The visuals are really interesting, the gameplay is really interesting, and all the people who I think have good taste, like Boghog, like ZeroRanger, I believe Jamers likes it as well, so definitely check out Sora. I'm going to be playing it more here in the future, hopefully. Then after that is a 3-for-1, the Ultimix Trilogy. I was leaning towards just promoting Kamui, but it didn't feel right, so we're going with all 3. We got Kamui, we got Alternate Second, or however the hell you say that, and we have Reflex. In my opinion, I would sort of rank them as Kamui and Alternate Second are both about as good as each other, just depending on what your tastes are. Kamui feels like an interesting take on Rayforce, so if you're a fan of Rayforce, it has a lot of similarities, but it's also doing a lot of stuff differently with like its laser beam system, and even the way the lock-ons work is a bit different than Rayforce, but it has that multi-plane style gameplay. And then Alternate Second, I'm not as familiar with it. Bog loves this game, and basically it's like one of the best shmups with sword mechanics, so if you want to be swinging a sword in a shmup, yeah, that's gonna really hit the spot. And then of the 3, we all kind of agreed Reflex is the weakest. I'm sure that's gonna piss off some Reflex fans out there, but hey, I'm at least mentioning it, I'm at least promoting it, and it doesn't feel right to not get all 3, and who knows, maybe you might like Reflex more than I do. But Ultimix Trilogy, 3-for-1, go for it. Then after that, we're kind of breaking the rules a little bit because this game is not available on Steam, but there's no other avenue to talk about it, so here we are. We're talking about a Gradius fan game called Universe. Boghog came across this, and in his experience, he feels like this is one of the best Gradius style games he's just ever played, period, including actual Gradius games. It's got fantastic pace, it's got really awesome enemy layouts. Overall, he thinks it is a force to be reckoned with, and luckily, because the title is Universe, it is so SEO unfriendly that Konami will never find it, so it will never get copyright struck because you will never find this game outside of the link I provide in the video description. It's a free download. Follow the link, download Universe, check it out, especially if you're a Gradius fan. So up next, we have Refrain Prism Memories. Fun fact, Refrain is the very first shmup I ever reviewed on this channel, and no one saw that review, so basically this is the first time I'm talking about Refrain that people will hear. It is hard to describe exactly the vibe of this game. It is pretty unique, where it's got some bullet hell elements, but then it's got some like radiant silver gun treasure things going on, and then it has all these unique weapons, and then it has this powered super system like you're playing Street Fighter Third Strike or something. There is just a lot to go through with this game. It has a cool cyberpunk aesthetic. I'm sure the story is interesting if you're into that. It just has a lot to offer, and I do think the graphics and visual style are unique and they do stand out within the genre. So I can't recommend it enough. And I know Dingo, an old school fan of the channel, really got into shmups through RefRain, so I do know that new players can also connect with it. And so then up next we have Assault Shell, and from what I understand, it takes a lot of inspiration from Crimzon Clover's break system. So you get breaks, you get double breaks, you got hypers and cancels and special weapons and tons of bullets and tons of enemies and everything you could really want. I think the graphics are a bit underwhelming. It's too bad there isn't more to them, but in terms of gameplay, I hear this game being highly recommended. So if you're a fan of that bullet hell canceling hyper action, Assault Shell is worth checking out. Then up next we have Demonizer, a indie shmup that holds a very special place in my heart. I am basically this game's biggest fan, and I can't articulate fully why I love Demonizer so much, but I love the aesthetic and the visuals. It reminds me of these early PC games that I play in some repressed memories that I can't quite conjure. And then it has this great gameplay flow where it's bullet hell, but then it has like the homing options from Battle Garega when you have the homing select, and then it's got the big old bombs like you get in Garega. So it's like this nice fusion between Cave and Garega. And it is very unique with the enemy design because it's like reverse Touhou. So Touhou has all flying enemies, and then most shmups traditionally heavily favor flying enemies. Demonizer, everything is grounded. All your enemies are on the ground, and that gives the game this really nice freedom of movement because you can move anywhere on screen that you want as long as a bullet isn't there. So you can always be flying much more forward in the screen than you typically can because nothing's gonna fly into you. You're over the top. You have wings, no one else does. You're raining down chaos from above. I still think Demonizer does not get the love that it deserves, so definitely check it out. So up next is a shmup with a title I am afraid to pronounce because it might rain down 1,000 years of curses upon my family, with a symbol that looks like it was formerly known as Prince right up front. So we'll just go ahead and call it Malicious Wake. This is a mysterious game. This is a mysterious shmup. Even its trailer footage here is mysterious. What is going on? What is happening? I don't know. Everyone thinks this game is good and no one can explain why. Between the three of us, all of our notes amount to just a line of question marks. So this is a mystery pick. If you're really into shmups, you should be checking it out. It should be on your radar, and you tell me why it's good. How about that? And then after that, we have Androdunos 2. This was a game that for some reason when I saw it announced, when I saw gameplay footage of it, I was quite convinced it was going to be a Euro shmup. For no good reason, just something about it. When I was looking at it, I'm like, this is gonna be a Euro shmup piece of garbage. But man, was I wrong. I actually had a ton of fun with this game when it came out. I reviewed it, I did a 1cc. I think it is a great follow-up to the original. And it's weird to make a sequel to a game that most people don't even know exists, but it worked out. So Androdunos 2, I know a lot of the Shmup Junkie fans were really into this game. I think this is a solid all-around choice for most Shmup fans. And then after that, we have Touhou, Blue Devil in the Belvedere. And before you get too mad about me adding a Touhou fan game to this list because Touhou is so popular and there's a million fan games, the reason why this fan game was chosen and selected is because it is doing something that I think normal Touhou should be doing, which is improving the presentation and graphics. This is one of the best looking Touhou games. Its visual presentation takes things up to the next level. This is what the series should be moving towards in terms of visuals. And from what I understand, the gameplay is also very solid. So even if you aren't a Touhou fan, maybe this one can win you over with its beautiful visuals. And then up next, we have Judgment Silver Sword. This isn't exactly as deep of a cut as some of the other games on this list, but the reason why I wanted to point it out is in the early days of Shmup Slam, Judgment Silver Sword was always a mainstay. It was in every single Slam event. And then as time has gone on, and more QTE games have come out, it feels like Judgment Silver Sword isn't getting the same attention that it once did. It is my favorite QTE game. It is a ton of fun. It has a high FPS mode on Steam, which is pretty unique for a shmup. It plays well, it feels good, so check it out if you haven't already. Then we have another Boghog recommendation, Cetasius. I'm hoping that's how it's pronounced. According to Boghog, this is a really well-made Gradius-styled horizontal shmup with more bullet hell elements than Gradius. So if you're playing Gradius and you're like, you know what, I want more bullets on screen. Then up next we have Grand Cross Renovation, which sounds like an RPG where you decorate houses, but it is actually a shmup. And this is a game that I think is doing a lot right, and it has been an example of great ideas and concepts that I think other indie shmups should be looking at right now. Like with the graphical presentation, I love the background work. I think it's picking up where Treasure left off with having more stuff going on and rotating in the background. It isn't just a PNG file you fly over. It has depth, it has movement. You feel like you're progressing through space. And then on top of that, it tackles what I call the aspect ratio of hell, which is the 16:9 vertical. The 16:9 vertical is an aspect ratio that we see more devs trying to get into because it is probably going to be the most commercial aspect ratio, but it is also one fraught with a lot of difficulty when it comes to level design because it is a lot of screen space to cover, and if you're not careful, you're going to give your game this kind of zoomed out, stale feel and presentation. Well, what Grand Cross Renovation does is it zooms it in. It brings you closer to the sprites and the characters, makes things larger so that it's taking up more real estate, and then it gives you a weapon that is able to control that wide horizontal aspect ratio where you can move it to the left and right. And I think this game is a great example of how to tackle this aspect ratio. Its big Achilles heel though is that it is just too easy. Developer, if you hear me, if my words mean anything to you, please, for the love of God, add a hard mode to this game because there's so much untapped potential, but the difficulty just isn't there. So that is a word of warning. If you're wanting a difficult shmup, Grand Cross is not going to be the choice for you. But if you're a newer player and you want a really fun, accessible, interesting experience, this is a solid choice, no doubt about it. Then after that, we have Nico Navy, which has a very charming, cute cat aesthetic and cartoony visual presentation. But on top of that, it also has solid horizontal bullet hell gameplay. So you're getting the best of both worlds there. This is a game that when it came out, I was wondering if it was just going to come and go like a lot of these kind of cuter shmups do. But it has stuck around. People still talk about it. People still play it. I'm recommending it right now. So if you haven't checked it out, if you love its aesthetic, if you're into this kind of thing, Nico Navy is going to be worth your time. And also, if you're a fan of this visual style, you need to check out another game that isn't on Steam, but you can get it on itch, which is Hazelnut Hex by Chunderfins. Really similar, cute, cartoonish style with surprisingly really solid level design and pattern design and enemy design. It's going to be a package deal. You got to get both. You get Nico Navy, you got to get Hazelnut Hex to go along with it. Then we have Blue Wish Desire. If you're a fan of Espegaluda, Esperade, and Mushihime-sama Futari, and you want a sort of indie PC experience for those games, for the ones that aren't on Steam, check out Blue Wish Desire. That's going to be scratching that itch perfectly. It is a really well-made bullet hell shmup with a lot of emphasis on boss fights. This is one of those picks that constantly comes up with really hardcore shmup fans. The number 21, we have Deztopia. Now, I actually haven't played Deztopia, but I have played Mecha Ritz, which precedes it. And M.Knight had great notes on the game, which I will read verbatim. Wacky game with 4-direction shooting, wild music and visuals. Shooting feels at times weak-ish when you're not charged, but holy motherfucking shit, so strong at other times, especially when hitting weak spots. The shop that is directly during the action is crazy stuff. No pace breaking there, no sir. That's good. The water stages kind of suck though. Then after that, we have Revolver 360 Reactor. This game, what do you say about this game other than what the hell is going on? It's like a cross between a shmup and a rail shooter. Has this sort of 3D rotating camera going on. And Zarok is a big fan of it, and that's recommendation enough in my book. So if you want that rail shooter shmup hybrid action, check out Revolver 360. Then after that, we have Like Dreamer, a recent release that is sort of a cross between cave-style patterns and enemy layouts and Touhou boss battles. And one notable feature of this game is its really meaty assets, you could say. And I'm a big fan of the theme of this game, which has to do with building up likes and followers and being a social media influencer. I think that's a really funny, cute concept. Overall, the visuals and the vibe of the game is really playful, but then it has that nice balance of gritty, brutal, actual gameplay and difficulty. So Like Dreamer, even though it is very cute, it is not for the faint of heart or for those who easily blush. Then after that, we have Super XYX. I remember really connecting with this game when it came out because I loved its really bright, saturated color, but then having sort of moodier visual designs and aesthetics. You don't quite see that cross very often, so I think visually the game stands out a lot. And then gameplay wise, it has an interesting feel and pace to it, where it's not quite bullet hell, but it's not quite traditional, and the pace is just really, really fast. You're blowing shit up, the explosion animations are awesome. It just is very visually rewarding. The big issue with Super XYX, and from what I've heard this game might be getting a big update patch soon, is that the bosses are a little too exploitable. There are maybe one or two many safe spots on the boss fights, but overall the game is a ton of fun and I recommend to pretty much all shmup fans out there. So then after that we have Sisters Royal. Now I'll admit, I'm not a big fan of this game. I find the visuals especially to be unappealing, but by damn, both M.Knight and Boghog apparently love this game and are insistent upon it being included on the list. And so if you love the game and you wanted it to be shouted out, you can thank M.Knight and Boghog for that. And if you're not a big fan of the game, you can blame them for that. Though I will admit, once I get past my distaste for the visuals, and the Switch port was a laggy nightmare. Don't get it on Switch, I'll tell you that much. I can recognize that it still has that Castle Shikigami flavor and charm. So if you're a fan of the Shiki series, and you don't mind looking at this, probably going to be a worthwhile pickup. I know Iconoclast is a big fan of it as well. Then after that, the car shmup Dead End City. So it's not just Turbo Force anymore. We have another car shmup on our hands, Dead End City. This game's pretty interesting. I played it in a Kumite on Octane's channel, and I believe the developer was there during the Kumite event. And it's this interesting mix where at the beginning of the stage, you're playing this sort of left and right style Galaga shmup throwback. And then once you get through that, for the boss fight section, you actually go into a traditional 8-way movement. I had a ton of fun with it. I remember even playing it more after the event ended. My one big piece of feedback that I gave the developer was I wish the explosions were bigger. I wish it was more maximum when it comes to the visuals and explosions and animations. I'm not sure if he took that bit of feedback or not. Nevertheless, it is a fun time, and I can especially see old school shmup fans really getting into it. And then we have Stania. This is another Boghog M.Knight recommendation, and this time I'm going to read to you Boghog's notes verbatim.
So I will drop my voice appropriately. Stania. Radiant Silvergun inspired mech shmup with insanely good presentation and the ability to equip different weapons in each hand, so you can dual sword it the fuck up. By the creators of Ikaruga and Gradius 5.
Okay, Boghog talks nothing like that, but I found that pretty entertaining. But overall, what really impressed me about Shield Maiden MX is it felt like a very polished release. It didn't feel rushed. It felt like he went through and made sure all the little things that you need to be mindful of were there. It has a nice continue system. I really liked that. I liked that it didn't let you just credit spam, but it offered you a nice way to train and practice. I liked the stage select. I liked the leaderboards. That's very cool. So this is a very polished, full-feature release that I think is impressively done, and I do recommend it, and I hope you all enjoy it. Adios, everyone. And then finally, we have Trouble Witch's origin, which needs to be expressed in M.Knight's words. And he says, fun hori with many cards and special weapons to use for score, plus a bullet slowdown plus cancel magic circle attack. The stage shops might break the pace a bit, but nothing too bad, hopefully. So there you are, 30 deep cut Steam shmup recommendations. And even if the games aren't on sale right now, go ahead and wishlist them, and hopefully they will go on sale at some point in the future. Adios, everyone.
So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, accepting Panda, Admiral Coconut, Anholt, Alexander Pfeiffer, Anthony A, Arcade Hell, Arrow Viper, Auto Name, Beam Pit, Bo, Ben, Beetle Dames, Boghog, Borgie22, Brian Shiver, Chase Palumbo, Child Maltese, Chris Yusufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Claricliff, Climby Coyote, Coast, Color Boy, Cooksand666, Cook Some Soup, Corey Mark, Des Audio, Danchi, Darren Griffin, Dave Hansen, David Crespo, Delta Tango 6, Dick Jones, Dingo, Disco Stas Leia, DJ420 Praise It, Dr. Boss Key, Elias Alonso, Evan Seraphet, FCK, Fiskin, Frames Per Human, Francisco, Full Set, Game Boy Guru, GPM, Hausu, Jake Ryan, JLab, JBRPG, Jink Hans, John Kelly, George Sand, K-Horse, K2, Contain, Praise the Boys, Low Casting, Miashpa, Malaise, Mars Bar, Matt O'Leary, Maz, Megadeth 859, Minung, Michael McCord, Mitchell Y, Moonro, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okolocools, Pedro Perez, Psycho Blizzard, Queen Charlene, Raul, Real Skeen, Retro Schmupper, Rick Mason, Rolf015, Scanline City, Sebastian, Seesaw FW, Shazzy, Shmup Junkie, Sarah Pong, Biters STG, Steady AI, Steve Fiction, Street Magic, Superfunk, SW1335, Camzarian, DeCaramucho, Taze, The Boot Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, Tony Latundula, Touhou Rizardi, TRM, Sugumu, 2YU, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Ursua, Ushi Mushi, Big Viper, Beautiful, Labby Legs, Yosef, Zachary Patton, and Zeal.